She doesn't deserve anything. She wasn't even really family. The envelope that destroyed everything. She was the heir they tried to erase. The DNA test they couldn't deny. She doesn't deserve anything. She deserves nothing, said the aunt, until she found the forbidden report that destroyed everything. In the stifling drawing room of the family estate, everyone had gathered to decide the fate of the assets left behind by Eleanor, the matriarch. At the center of the table, stacks of documents, folders, signatures, and voices arguing as if they were discussing objects, not lives. When someone asked if Maya would be entitled to anything, her aunt, Vivian, responded without even looking up. She doesn't deserve anything. She wasn't even really family. The silence that followed was as heavy as the humiliation. Some cousins laughed. Others looked away. Maya stood there, motionless, as if hearing this for the first time, though she'd heard it her entire life. When everyone left to celebrate, Maya stayed behind to collect forgotten papers, and it was there, among folders scattered on the floor, that she found a different envelope, marked in red ink, "Report, confidential, do not disclose." Inside were details that should never have reached her hands, details that would make that entire table tremble. Maya was never treated as a real part of the family. She grew up hearing cutting remarks disguised as jokes, looks that measured her as if she were always the simple one, and decisions made without considering her existence. She was the charity case niece, raised in Aunt Vivian's house after her mother died, and for many there that made her someone who owed eternal gratitude and silence. Her aunt controlled everything, the conversations, the memories, the family narrative, and she always made it clear that Maya should be content with what she received, because, according to her, she had no right to the rest. But when the matriarch died, Maya believed for an instant that perhaps she'd find a trace of recognition. Instead, she received contempt, and so, humiliated and ignored, she collected the papers scattered across the table until her fingers touched the envelope that wasn't there by accident, the envelope containing the forbidden report, and nothing would be the same after that. Maya stood by the sideboard, a crystal pitcher of water trembling slightly in her hands, 23 years old, and she still felt 12 in this house. Small, unnecessary, a shadow waiting for permission to exist. The mahogany table stretched before her like a battlefield. Around it sat the warriors, Aunt Vivian at the head naturally, her pearl necklace catching the afternoon light like armor. Uncle Richard to her right, already loosening his tie, ready for the spoils. Cousins Brandon and Stephanie whispered to each other, their phones out, probably texting about vacation homes and sports cars before the ink dried on any official documents. The Riverside properties should be divided among the immediate family, Vivian announced, her voice crisp as fresh money. She didn't ask. She never asked. That's what Mother would have wanted. Maya's hand tightened on the pitcher. Eleanor, grandmother Eleanor, though Maya had never been allowed to call her that, had loved the Riverside cottages. She used to take Maya there as a child, before Vivian found out and put a stop to it. What about the investment accounts? Richard leaned forward, his cologne overwhelming the room's musty air. Those will be liquidated and distributed according to birth order, Vivian said, sliding papers across the table. Everything is very clear. Maya moved forward to refill water glasses. Brandon didn't even acknowledge her presence, just pushed his glass toward her like she was furniture with a function. And the jewelry? Stephanie's eyes gleamed. Grandmother's emerald collection? Among the granddaughters, Vivian said. Maya's breath caught. She was a granddaughter, wasn't she? The question must have shown on her face because Stephanie glanced up, caught her expression, and smirked. The real granddaughters, obviously. Laughter rippled around the table. Not cruel laughter. That would require them to see her as enough of a person to be cruel to. This was casual, dismissive, the kind of laughter that erased her more thoroughly than anger ever could. Maya, Vivian's voice cut through the room. More ice, please. Yes, Aunt Vivian. She retreated to the kitchen, her face burning. Through the swinging door, she could hear them continue. We should address the memorial fund, Richard said. Mother wanted scholarships established. In the family name, naturally, Vivian agreed. Nothing too generous. We don't want to encourage dependency. The irony would have been funny if it didn't hurt so much. Maya had lived on Vivian's generosity for 15 years. Every meal, every piece of clothing, every school supply had been a gift she was expected to be grateful for, a debt she could never repay. When she returned with ice, the conversation had moved to legal formalities. What about Maya? The question came from Uncle Richard's wife, Patricia, a woman who visited twice a year and pretended to care. Doesn't she get anything? The table fell silent. Vivian set down her pen with deliberate precision. Maya has been provided for her entire life. She's lived in this house, eaten our food, received the finest education we could provide despite her circumstances. She's been given far more than most would have offered. But Eleanor's will, Patricia started. Eleanor's will, Vivian interrupted, her voice sharp as broken glass, was written when she was quite elderly and not always clear in her thinking. The legal documents reflect the proper distribution. Maya wasn't blood family. She was my sister's child, and I took her in out of duty and love for her mother. But she has no legal claim to Eleanor's estate. Vivian looked directly at Maya for the first time that afternoon. She doesn't deserve anything. She wasn't even really family. The words landed like stones in still water, rippling outward into silence. Maya's vision blurred. Her hands went numb. She was aware of her cousin's smirks, Patricia's awkward sympathy, Richard's uncomfortable cough, but mostly she was aware of the terrible, crushing weight of being erased while still standing in the room. Meeting adjourned, Vivian announced, standing. Richard, the lawyers are waiting in the study. The rest of you, there's champagne in the parlor. They filed out, their voices rising again, excited now, planning their futures with Eleanor's money. No one looked back at Maya. She stood alone in the empty room, surrounded by scattered papers and abandoned coffee cups, wondering why she'd ever expected anything different. It was only when she bent to collect the documents that she saw it, a manila envelope half hidden under Eleanor's chair, marked in red ink that seemed to pulse with warning. Her fingers trembled as she reached for it. 15 years earlier, the social worker's car smelled like vanilla air freshener and sadness. 7-year-old Maya pressed her face against the window, watching her old neighborhood disappear behind them. "Your Aunt Vivian is very kind to take you in," the woman said, her voice too bright. "Not everyone would." Maya didn't answer. She was holding her mother's hairbrush, the only thing she'd been allowed to bring. Everything else, the photos, the drawings, her mother's jewelry box with the dancing ballerina, had been dealt with. That's what the social worker kept saying. We've dealt with it. Like her mother's death was a problem to be solved. Vivian's house was enormous. White pillars, a circular driveway, windows that gleamed like eyes. Maya's whole apartment could have fit in the entryway. "You must be Maya." Vivian stood in the doorway, elegant in cream linen, her smile as perfect as her house. "Come in, dear, this is your home now." But it was never home. The first night Maya was given a room on the 3rd floor, the servants' quarters, though Vivian never called it that. "You'll be comfortable here," she'd said. "Close to the laundry room. Very convenient." Brandon and Stephanie lived on the 2nd floor in rooms twice the size, with their own bathrooms and walk-in closets. "Why does she get to live here?" 9-year-old Stephanie had demanded at dinner that first week. "Because we're charitable people," Vivian answered, cutting her prime rib with surgical precision. "Maya's mother was my sister, and despite our differences, family is family, even when it's inconvenient." Maya learned quickly what charitable meant in Vivian's house. It meant setting the table while Brandon and Stephanie did homework. It meant doing dishes while they watched television. It meant spending summers cleaning out closets while they went to camp. "You're so lucky," Vivian would say, watching Maya scrub floors. "Do you know how much it costs to hire help? I'm teaching you valuable skills." "Gratitude, Maya. Show some gratitude." School was worse. Brandon and Stephanie attended St. Catherine's Preparatory, with its ivy-covered walls and 6-figure tuition. Maya went to Jefferson Public, where the textbooks had torn covers, and the cafeteria smelled like institutional sorrow. "It's more appropriate for your background," Vivian explained. "We wouldn't want you to feel out of place." But Maya excelled anyway. Straight A's, honor roll, teachers who wrote glowing recommendations. She thought maybe, that would earn her something. Recognition. Respect. Instead, when she brought home her report card, Vivian barely glanced at it. "Very nice, dear. Now the gutters need cleaning before winter." The worst part wasn't the work. Maya didn't mind work. Her mother had worked 3 jobs and still sang in the kitchen, still read to Maya every night, still made their tiny apartment feel like the whole world. The worst part was the casual cruelty disguised as jokes. "Maya, could you clean the guest bathroom?" "Oh wait, you already live there," Brandon would laugh. "Maya's school probably doesn't even have AP classes. Is that right, Maya? Do you even know what AP means?" Stephanie would smirk, and Vivian would smile indulgently. "Now children, Be kind to your cousin. She's doing her best with what she's been given. As if Maya's intelligence, her character, her very worth had been genetically limited by her mother's bank account. But there were moments, rare, precious moments, when Maya felt something different. Eleanor's visits. The matriarch would arrive in her black Lincoln, always bringing gifts, books for Brandon's collection, designer bags for Stephanie, charitable donations, receipts for Vivian to display. And for Maya, something different, something secret, a hand squeeze when no one was looking, a whispered, "You look so much like her," when Vivian wasn't listening. Once, Eleanor had taken Maya's face in her soft, wrinkled hands and studied her with such intensity that Maya felt seen for the first time in months. "You have her eyes," Eleanor had whispered. "Your mother's eyes. Never forget that." But then Vivian would sweep in, and Eleanor would straighten, and the moment would shatter like dropped glass. "Mother, don't tire yourself," Vivian would say, maneuvering Eleanor toward the formal living room, away from Maya's orbit. Maya learned to steal these moments, to hoard them like treasure. A smile from Eleanor, a pat on the shoulder. Once, on Maya's 16th birthday, a card with $20 tucked inside and a note, "For something just for you." Vivian had found it, of course. "How generous of grandmother," she'd said, pocketing the money. "This will cover your school supplies for the semester. See how everyone contributes to your care." Maya had stopped expecting kindness after that. She'd stopped expecting anything at all, until Eleanor died, and some foolish part of her heart had whispered, maybe now someone will tell the truth. Eleanor Whitmore had been a force of nature, disguised as an elegant elderly woman. Born in 1935, she'd survived the Depression's tail end, built a fortune in post-war real estate, and raised 3 daughters with an iron will wrapped in silk gloves. The Whitmore name meant something in Boston. Old money, older values, and the kind of power that didn't need to announce itself. But Eleanor had always been different from her generation. She'd divorced her husband in 1970, scandalous for the time, after discovering his affairs. She'd taken her maiden name back, raised her daughters alone, and built her empire higher. She didn't attend church but donated to homeless shelters. She didn't join country clubs but funded women's education initiatives. She was complicated, people would say at her funeral, which was code for she didn't do what we expected. What they didn't know, what almost no one knew, was how much Eleanor had loved Maya's mother, Sarah. The name Vivian never spoke. But in Eleanor's bedroom, in a drawer Maya would later discover, there were dozens of photographs. Sarah as a young woman, laughing in Eleanor's garden. Sarah and Eleanor at a charity gala, both in evening gowns. Sarah holding infant Maya, Eleanor's hand on her shoulder, both women glowing. Sarah had started as Eleanor's personal assistant in 1999, hired through an agency when Eleanor was expanding her property management business. She was 22, brilliant with numbers, and desperately in need of work after her own mother's death left her with nothing. Eleanor saw something in her immediately, not just competence, though Sarah was extraordinarily competent, something deeper, a resilience, a quiet strength that reminded Eleanor of herself at that age. Within months, Sarah had moved from assistant to financial manager. Within a year, she had her own office. Eleanor called her the daughter of my heart at staff meetings, which made Vivian's blood boil. Vivian, the middle daughter, had always been the most ambitious and the least secure. She'd married wealth, but not enough of it. She social climbed, but never quite reached the summit. And she resented, deeply, poisonously resented, that her mother seemed to prefer the help to her own daughter. The breaking point came in 2007. Sarah discovered she was pregnant. She told Eleanor first. They were in the study, going over quarterly reports when Sarah started crying. Eleanor, who rarely showed physical affection, had held her and asked simply, "What do you want to do?" "I want to keep her," Sarah whispered. "I know it's stupid. I know I'm alone, but I want to keep her." "Then you'll keep her," Eleanor said firmly. "And you won't be alone." Eleanor set up a trust fund that day, called her lawyer, made arrangements for Sarah to take maternity leave with full pay, to have access to the best medical care, to return to work with childcare provided. Vivian found out and exploded. "You're giving money to your assistant," she'd shrieked. "Your own daughters could use that support. Do you know how much Brandon's tutoring costs? How much Stephanie's music lessons are?" "Your daughters have trust funds," Eleanor said coldly. "Your own husband has a thriving practice. Sarah has nothing but her intelligence and her determination. I'm evening the scales." By giving our family money to a nobody. By helping someone who actually deserves it. The words had created a rift that never healed. When Maya was born in 2008, Eleanor was at the hospital, held the baby, whispered promises only Sarah heard. For 7 years, Eleanor kept those promises. She watched Maya grow, sent gifts, visited often despite Vivian's mounting hostility. She planned to do more, so much more. There were documents being drawn up, arrangements being made. But then Sarah got sick. Ovarian cancer, stage 4, diagnosed too late. She deteriorated rapidly, her medical bills mounting despite Eleanor's intervention. In Sarah's final days, Eleanor visited the hospital every afternoon, sat beside her bed, held her hand. "Promise me," Sarah had whispered, her voice barely audible. "Promise me you'll tell her. Tell Maya who her father was. She deserves to know." Eleanor had frozen. "I can't," she'd whispered back. "Not yet. Vivian already suspects," Sarah interrupted. "Why do you think she hates me so much?" "I'll protect her," Eleanor promised. "I'll make sure she's taken care of. She'll have everything she deserves, I swear it." "Tell her the truth," Sarah begged, "please." "When she's older," Eleanor promised. "When she's strong enough to fight for it." But Sarah died the next week, and Eleanor, drowning in her own grief, made a catastrophic mistake. She let Vivian take Maya. "It's what's best," Vivian had argued. "She's family. I'll raise her properly." Eleanor, weakened by grief and guilt, had agreed. Temporarily, she told herself. Just until she could figure out the legal complications, just until Maya was older. She'd set up the trust fund, hidden documents, created fail-safes. But then, Eleanor's own health began to fail. Small strokes, memory issues. And Vivian, sensing opportunity, moved closer, took control, became the gatekeeper. By the time Eleanor realized what was happening, she was too weak to fight. But she wasn't too weak to leave clues. In her final months, Eleanor created a trail of breadcrumbs. Documents labeled and hidden, recordings made, letters written, a forbidden report compiled. All of it designed for one purpose, so that Maya would eventually discover the truth, that she was never the charity case. She was the heiress they'd tried to erase. Vivian Whitmore Sterling had built her entire identity on control. Control over her appearance, Botox every 3 months, personal trainer 4 times a week, closet organized by color and season. Control over her household, staff hired and fired based on absolute obedience, children raised according to strict social calendars, husband kept comfortable enough not to question. Control over the narrative. Every family story, every memory, every historical detail, filtered through her version of reality. But underneath the pearl necklaces and perfectly blown-out hair, Vivian was terrified. Terrified that people would see through the facade. Terrified that her mother had never truly loved her. Terrified that despite all her striving, she would never be enough. And Sarah, beautiful, intelligent, genuinely kind Sarah, had represented everything Vivian feared. Her mother had loved Sarah instantly, naturally, without Sarah having to perform or prove or perfect anything. It was effortless for Sarah in a way it had never been for Vivian. Worse, Vivian suspected, had always suspected, something deeper. She'd seen how Richard looked at Sarah during the few charity dinners where assistants were invited. She'd noticed how Sarah would sometimes disappear from Eleanor's events, and how certain family members would be absent at the same time. She'd heard whispered conversations cut short when she entered rooms, and she'd found once a photograph in her mother's desk. Sarah and a man Vivian recognized, though his face had been scratched out with such violence that the paper was torn. When Sarah announced her pregnancy, Vivian had known. She couldn't prove it. Sarah never named the father, but Vivian knew, and that knowledge was a poison that seeped into everything. When Sarah died, Vivian had volunteered to take Maya with specific intentions. Not mercy, not family loyalty, revenge. If she couldn't punish Sarah, dead and beyond reach, she would punish Sarah's daughter, not with obvious cruelty, nothing that could be pointed to and criticized, but with 1,000 small cuts disguised as kindness. "I took her in when no one else would," Vivian would tell friends, sighing dramatically. "It's exhausting, but it's what family does." She made sure Maya wore clothes from discount stores, while Brandon and Stephanie wore designer labels. "We don't want to spoil her," Vivian would explain. "She needs to understand that life requires work." She enrolled Maya in public school. Private school expectations might be too stressful for her background, Vivian reasoned. She gave Maya the attic room. "She prefers privacy," Vivian told visitors. Every decision was engineered to keep Maya small, separate, aware of her place. But it went deeper than simple cruelty. Vivian systematically erased Sarah from family history. Photographs were removed from albums. Mentions of Sarah at family gatherings were shut down with a sharp look. Eleanor's fondness for Sarah was reframed as mother's charitable phase or that unfortunate situation. When Maya asked about her mother, Vivian provided minimal information. She worked for grandmother. She got sick. These things happen. End of discussion. The one-time teenage Maya had pressed, "But what was she like? Did you know her?" Vivian had responded with ice in her voice. "I knew her well enough. She was fine at her job. Beyond that, there's nothing worth discussing. The past is past, Maya. Focus on being grateful for your present." The unspoken message was clear. Your mother was nobody. You are nobody. Be grateful we acknowledge you at all. Vivian controlled the information, controlled the narrative, controlled Maya's entire understanding of her own history, and it worked. By the time Maya was a teenager, she'd stopped asking questions, stopped hoping for stories, stopped believing she came from anywhere that mattered. She'd accepted Vivian's version of reality, that she was a burden who'd been mercifully shouldered. What Vivian didn't know, couldn't have known, was that Eleanor had been documenting everything. Every instance of Vivian's cruelty, every suspicious financial transaction, every manipulation. Eleanor had watched her middle daughter with growing horror, realizing too late the monster she'd allowed into Maya's life. The matriarch had been too weak to intervene directly, but she wasn't too weak to create insurance. Documents sealed and dated, lawyers briefed with instructions to be opened only after her death, a trail of evidence that would eventually lead Maya to the truth. Eleanor had built a time bomb in the foundation of Vivian's carefully constructed kingdom, and 15 years later, standing in an empty room with a forbidden envelope in her hands, Maya was about to light the fuse. Maya waited until midnight. The house was silent except for the old familiar sounds. Pipes settling, wind against windows, the distant hum of the refrigerator 2 floors down. She'd lived with these sounds for 15 years. They usually comforted her. Tonight, they felt like warnings. The envelope sat on her narrow bed, its red ink seeming to pulse even in the dim light from her bedside lamp. Report. Confidential. Do not disclose. Her hands trembled as she broke the seal. Inside were 3 sections, each marked with colored tabs. Financial, blue, medical, green, and legal, red. Maya started with financial. The first pages showed Eleanor's complete asset portfolio as of 2010, 3 years after Sarah's death. Properties, investments, business holdings. The numbers made Maya dizzy. Millions. Tens of millions. But it was the highlighted transactions that made her stomach drop. Regular transfers to an account labeled SM Healthcare Trust. $50,000 monthly deposit starting in 2007, continuing until 2009. Sarah. Maya. The trust was for them. Then, abruptly, the transfers stopped. The next page showed the same account, but under different management. The trustee had changed from Eleanor Whitmore to Vivian Whitmore Sterling, designated guardian, and the withdrawals began. $30,000 in August 2010, listed as educational expenses. But Maya had attended public school. She'd never seen that money. $45,000 in December 2010. Medical and therapeutic care. Maya had been healthy. She'd never been to therapy. $60,000 in March 2011. Residential improvements, ward accommodation. The attic room had never been improved. It still had the same water-stained ceiling, the same creaking floorboards. Page after page documented withdrawals, hundreds of thousands of dollars, all supposedly spent on Maya's care. All lies. Maya's vision blurred. Her throat tightened. The money meant for her, meant by Eleanor, saved by her mother, had been systematically stolen. She forced herself to keep reading. The medical section was thinner, but more devastating. It contained Sarah's hospital records from her final illness. But it also contained something else. A genetic testing report from 2007. Maya scanned it, not understanding at first. Medical terminology. Lab numbers. Then her eyes caught on a single highlighted line. Paternity confirmation. Probability of paternity. 99.9997%. Below it, 2 names. Mother, Sarah Madison. Father, redacted. But someone had written in pencil, in shaky handwriting that Maya recognized as Eleanor's. Michael Whitmore Sterling, Vivian's husband. Richard's brother. Maya's father was Michael. The room tilted. Maya gripped the bed frame, her breath coming in sharp gasps. Michael had died in 2012, a car accident, sudden and tragic. She'd been at the funeral, invisible in the back row, watching Vivian weep dramatically, watching the family mourn. No one had looked at the 8-year-old girl who'd been living in their house. No one had seen the father standing 10 feet from his daughter. Maya pressed her hands against her mouth, trying not to scream. All those years of being told she wasn't family, didn't belong, should be grateful for scraps. And she'd been a direct descendant, Eleanor's legitimate granddaughter. She'd had every right to be there, every right to the name, the love, the inheritance. And they'd known. Vivian had known. That's why she'd hated Sarah so much. Why she'd taken Maya in. Not out of kindness, but to keep her close. To control the evidence of her husband's infidelity. To punish the child who represented her humiliation. Maya wanted to vomit, wanted to scream, wanted to run through the house tearing down the portraits of the family she'd never been allowed to claim. Instead, with shaking hands, she turned to the legal section. This was the thickest section. Contracts, agreements, deed transfers. And there, in the middle, a document dated January 15th, 2025, 3 weeks before Eleanor's death. Last will and testament of Eleanor Whitmore. Maya's eyes raced over the legal language, her heart hammering. To my granddaughter Maya Madison, daughter of my deceased daughter Sarah Madison, and my grandson Michael Whitmore Sterling. Granddaughter. Official. Legal. Declared. I leave the entirety of the Riverside property collection, the Madison Trust Fund, original balance $2.3 million, current balance to be determined, and 40% of all remaining liquid assets. 40%. Furthermore, documents revealing fraudulent management of the aforementioned trust fund by Vivian Whitmore Sterling should be referred to the district attorney. Fraudulent management, criminal charges. It is my deepest regret that I lacked the courage to acknowledge this truth while both Sarah and Michael lived. Maya, you were never the outsider they made you feel. You were always mine, always ours. Take what is yours. E.W. The page blurred as tears finally came. Eleanor had known everything, had documented everything, had created this report as proof, as weapon, as inheritance. Maya wasn't the charity case. She was the heiress they'd tried to erase, and now she held the proof they could never deny. Maya didn't sleep that night. Instead, she read every page again, forced herself to absorb the entire story written in legal documents, medical records, and financial statements. By dawn, she understood not just what had happened, but why. Sarah Madison had arrived at Eleanor's offices in 1999, 22 years old, orphaned, brilliant, and broke. Eleanor recognized something of herself in the young woman, that particular combination of intelligence and determination sharpened by necessity. Within months, Sarah had revolutionized Eleanor's accounting systems. She found inefficiencies, negotiated better contracts, discovered a vendor who'd been overcharging for years. She saved the company nearly $500,000 in her first year. Eleanor promoted her rapidly, personal assistant to financial manager to director of operations. Sarah was given an office, a salary that reflected her value, respect she'd never known, and she'd been so grateful. The documents showed thank you notes Sarah had written, saved by Eleanor in a folder labeled Treasures. You gave me a chance when no one else would, Sarah had written after her first promotion. You saw me when I was invisible to everyone else. I won't let you down. Eleanor had written back. Maya found the carbon copy. You were never invisible, dear girl. The world was simply blind. I'm grateful you let me see you. They'd become more than employer and employee. Eleanor had taken Sarah to charity galas, introduced her to business contacts, treated her like the daughter Vivian had never quite managed to be, which is exactly what had infuriated Vivian. The medical record showed something else, something that made the entire tragedy even more painful. Sarah had met Michael Whitmore Sterling at a family Christmas party in 2006. He was Richard's younger brother, a patent attorney, recently separated from his wife. Handsome, charming, lost. Sarah's diary entries were included in the report. Eleanor must have kept them after Sarah's death. Reading her mother's private thoughts felt like violation and gift simultaneously. December 27, 2006. Met someone tonight. Shouldn't write about it. Shouldn't even think about it. But he looked at me like I was real. Not the help. Not Eleanor's assistant. Just me. January 10, 2007. We had coffee. Just coffee. He's going through a divorce. Says his wife never understood him. I know that's what they all say, but when he talks about feeling invisible in his own home, I understood. I've felt invisible my whole life. February 14th, 2007. This is a mistake. I know it's a mistake. But I'm so tired of being careful. Tired of being grateful. Just once I want something for myself. The affair lasted 6 months. Secret meetings. Stolen moments. Michael promised to finalize his divorce, to make things official. Then Sarah discovered she was pregnant, and Michael panicked. The report included phone records, dozens of calls from Sarah to Michael, none returned. A letter Sarah had written but apparently never sent. Michael, I'm not asking you to leave your family, I'm not asking for money. I just wanted you to know you have a daughter. Her name is Maya. She has your eyes. If you ever want to meet her, I'll be here. If not, I understand. But she deserves to know she came from love, even if it was brief. Eleanor had found out about the pregnancy when Sarah was 4 months along. The record showed Eleanor had tried to contact Michael, to force him to take responsibility. Michael had responded through a lawyer, denied everything, demanded a paternity test to prove it wasn't his child. Eleanor had arranged the test. The results were irrefutable. Then Eleanor had done something extraordinary. She'd confronted the entire Whitmore family. A transcript of that meeting was included in the report. Someone had recorded it. Vivian's voice shrill, "That woman seduced my brother-in-law. She's trying to trap him." Eleanor's voice steel cold, "That woman is carrying my grandchild. Michael will do the right thing." Michael's voice weak, "Mother, I can't. My divorce isn't final." The optics, Eleanor had snapped. "Your daughter's welfare is about optics." Richard had tried to mediate. "Perhaps if we settled this quietly, a trust fund for the child. Non-disclosure agreement." And Vivian, always Vivian, twisting the knife. Why should we give anything to someone trying to extort this family? She knew exactly what she was doing. Eleanor had made her decision then. She'd set up the trust fund herself, removed Michael from her will, told Sarah she would support her and the baby always, and she'd warned Vivian, "If anything happens to Sarah or that child, I will ensure everyone knows exactly what Michael did. Don't test me." For 7 years, an uneasy peace held. Sarah raised Maya alone. Eleanor helped quietly. Michael avoided them both, drowning his guilt in work. Then Sarah got sick, and the carefully constructed walls began to crumble. Sarah's final words, recorded by a hospice nurse in the medical records, "Tell Maya, tell her she was wanted. Tell her she came from love. Tell her she's a Whitmore. Don't let them erase her like they erased me." But they had erased her. They'd erased both of them. Until now. Maya held her mother's diary entries, pressed them against her chest, and let herself cry for the woman who'd loved her, fought for her, and died trying to protect her. "I'm a Whitmore," Maya whispered to the empty room. "I'm your daughter, and they're not erasing us anymore." The second envelope was smaller, tucked into a pocket of the report Maya almost missed. It was labeled simply, "For Maya, open alone." Inside was a handwritten letter from Eleanor, dated January 20th, 2025, the day before she died. "My dearest Maya, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and Vivian has likely already tried to erase you from this family's story. I'm sorry, I'm so profoundly sorry that I let fear and weakness allow this to happen. You are my granddaughter, not by charity, not by pity, by blood and by right. Your mother was the daughter I should have been brave enough to acknowledge. Your father, Michael, was too cowardly to claim you. I was too political to force the issue while he lived. These are failures I cannot repair. But I can give you the truth. The will Vivian will present is false. I was forced to create it when she threatened to have me declared incompetent. My strokes gave her ammunition. My real lawyer, Thomas Henderson in New York, has the legitimate will. This package should have triggered his contact automatically. Everything in this report is true. Vivian has been stealing from your trust fund for 13 years. She's committed fraud, embezzlement, and likely tax evasion. The evidence is irrefutable. But here's what she doesn't know. I never changed my mind about you. Every confusion she used to manipulate my estate planning was an act. I was buying time, documenting her crimes, building a case she could never escape. The Riverside properties are yours. I've never transferred those titles, despite what she claims. The Madison Trust Fund is yours, currently valued at $3.7 million after her theft. You'll recover that through prosecution. 40% of my liquid estate is yours. Approximately $12 million. My shares in Whitmore Properties are yours, giving you controlling interest in the company Vivian thinks she inherited. You are not the poor relation, Maya. You are the primary heir. And here's the weapon I'm giving you. Patience. Don't confront her immediately. Let her expose herself. Document everything she does after my death. Every lie she tells, every document she falsifies, every penny she tries to steal. It's all additional evidence. Then when you're ready, contact Thomas. He has instructions to unleash everything. You were always supposed to be here, my darling girl, in this house, bearing this name, leading this family. They tried to make you small because they feared how large you could become. Prove them right to be afraid. With all my love, Eleanor Maya read the letter 3 times. Her hands steady now, her tears dried. Eleanor had known everything, had planned everything, had turned her own weakness into strategy. The false will wasn't weakness, it was bait. The hidden report wasn't desperation, it was ammunition. And Maya wasn't the victim of this story. She was the hero waiting to be revealed. She pulled out her phone and searched for Thomas Henderson, attorney at law, New York City. His office opened at 9 a.m. She'd call the moment they did. But first, she needed to be smart. Vivian was already moving forward with her version of the estate distribution. The meeting yesterday had been just the beginning. There would be bank transfers, title changes, legal filings. Everyone would be evidence of fraud. Maya opened her laptop and created a new folder, Documentation. She photographed every page of the report, uploaded them to 3 separate cloud accounts, emailed copies to herself at 3 different addresses. Then she did something that felt like power incarnate. She started a journal. Day 1, after discovery. Today I learned I am not Maya Madison, the charity case. I am Maya Whitmore, granddaughter and heiress. I learned my mother was not shameful, but beloved. I learned my father was a coward, but his cowardice doesn't define me. Most importantly, I learned that Vivian Whitmore Sterling is a thief and a fraud, and I'm going to prove it. Eleanor gave me patience as a weapon. I'm going to use it. Let them have their celebration. Let them divide the spoils. Let them think they've won. Because every fraudulent document they file, every false claim they make, every penny they steal, thinking it's theirs, it's all evidence I'll use to destroy them. I am not the forgotten niece. I am the granddaughter who remembers everything. And I'm coming for what's mine. Maya closed the laptop and looked around her attic room, this space they'd given her to keep her small and separate. Tomorrow, she would start playing the role they expected. Quiet, defeated, grateful. But inside, she would be planning. Inside, she would be sharpening the knife Eleanor had forged. Inside, she would be transforming from victim to victor. The war had begun, and they didn't even know they'd already lost. Maya descended to breakfast at exactly 7:30 a.m., the same time she had every morning for 15 years. She wore her usual clothes, discount store jeans, a plain sweater. She kept her expression neutral, her shoulders slightly hunched in the posture of someone trying not to take up too much space. But inside, she was vibrating with purpose. Vivian sat at the breakfast table reading the financial section, her reading glasses perched on her nose. She barely glanced up when Maya entered. "Good morning, Aunt Vivian." There's oatmeal on the stove. The kitchen needs to be cleaned after. We're having the lawyers here this afternoon for final signatures." Of course. Maya moved to the stove, her mind racing. Final signatures. They were moving fast. "You'll need to be out of the house between 2 and 5, Vivian continued. "Family business. I'm sure you understand." "Of course," Maya repeated, pouring oatmeal into a bowl. Perfect. That gave her time. She spent the morning playing her role. Cleaned the kitchen until it gleamed, vacuumed the formal living room, collected the mail, and organized it on Vivian's desk. And she watched. She observed. She documented. At 9:03 a.m., she called Thomas Henderson's office from her cell phone, locked in the 3rd-floor bathroom. "Henderson and Associates," a crisp voice answered. "I need to speak with Thomas Henderson. My name is Maya Madison, Maya Whitmore. It's regarding Eleanor Whitmore's estate." A pause. "Please hold." 30 seconds that felt like hours. Then a man's voice, older, careful. "Ms. Madison, I've been expecting your call. Actually, I've been expecting it for 3 days. Eleanor's instructions were that you should have received the package within 24 hours of her death. I just found it last night. It was hidden. Deliberately, I imagine." Papers shuffled. "Can you confirm the contents?" "There should be 3 sections, financial, medical, and legal." Maya described them. Henderson made satisfied noises. Good. And the letter? Yes. She said you have the real will. I have many things, Miss Madison. His voice warmed slightly. Your grandmother was extraordinarily thorough. She's been sending me documentation for 3 years, every instance of fraud, every suspicious transaction. She knew exactly what Vivian was doing. Maya's throat tightened. Why didn't she stop her? Because stopping Vivian meant going public with your parentage, which would have exposed you to the family's full hostility, while Eleanor was too weak to protect you. She chose instead to let Vivian hang herself, build an irrefutable case. Wait until you were old enough and strong enough to fight. I'm 23, Maya said. I'm ready now. I know you are. Eleanor believed you would be. More papers. Here's what happens next. Vivian will file the false will within the next few days. Probably has already begun the process. Let her. Every step she takes is additional fraud. How long do I wait? Until she's transferred assets. Until she's filed false documents with the court. Until she's committed so many crimes that there's no way out. Then we strike. We file the real will, present all evidence, and contact the district attorney simultaneously. How long are we talking? 2 weeks, maybe 3. Can you maintain your cover that long? Maya thought about 15 years of maintaining cover, of biting her tongue, of making herself small. I can do it forever if I have to, she said. But I'd prefer not to. Henderson actually laughed. You sound like Eleanor. She said you had steel in you that you hadn't discovered yet. I'm looking forward to meeting you, Ms. Whitmore. Ms. Whitmore. Not Madison. Whitmore. What should I do in the meantime? Document everything. If they give you any papers to sign, photograph them first, then refuse to sign. Be as invisible as they expect you to be, and trust that justice is coming. Maya ended the call and stared at herself in the bathroom mirror, the same face she'd seen for 23 years. Brown eyes. Michael's eyes, she realized now. Dark hair like Sarah's. Eleanor's determined chin, but something was different. She didn't look small anymore. At 1:45 p.m., Maya left the house as instructed. But she didn't go far. Just to the coffee shop 2 blocks away, the one with a view of the front entrance. She ordered an espresso and opened her laptop. Then she began her real work. The house had security cameras, installed 2 years ago after a break-in in the neighborhood. Vivian had insisted on them. What Vivian didn't know was that Maya had been the one to set up the cloud storage system, had created all the passwords, had administrative access to everything. Maya pulled up the camera feeds on her laptop. She could see the formal living room where the lawyers were gathering, could see Vivian in her pearls, playing the grieving daughter, could see Richard and the cousins dressed in their best, ready to claim their inheritance, and she could record everything. She hit the record button on all 6 camera angles and settled in to watch. The lawyers arrived at 2:15 p.m., 3 men in expensive suits carrying leather briefcases. Not Thomas Henderson. These were local attorneys, probably ones Vivian had carefully selected. Through the camera's audio, another feature Vivian had insisted on for security, Maya could hear everything. We're here to execute the final will and testament of Eleanor Whitmore, the lead attorney announced. All beneficiaries are present except, he consulted his papers, Maya Madison, who's been determined to have no legal standing in this matter. Vivian's voice smooth as poison. Maya was never formally adopted. She was a ward, essentially. My mother cared for her out of charity, but the legal documentation is clear. She has no claim. Very well. Let's proceed with the reading. Maya leaned forward, recording every word. The false will divided Eleanor's estate exactly as Vivian wanted. The properties to Vivian. The liquid assets split among Vivian, Richard, and the grandchildren. The business interest to Vivian as the most capable manager. Maya's name was mentioned once. Maya Madison shall receive a one-time payment of $50,000 in recognition of Eleanor Whitmore's charitable support of her upbringing. $50,000 out of an estate worth over $30 million, and they thought that was generous. Maya watched Vivian sign documents, watched Richard sign, watched Brandon and Stephanie sign, both grinning like they'd won the lottery. She recorded it all. Then she did something else. She accessed the house's cloud storage system and downloaded every security recording from the past 3 years. Every argument, every private conversation, every moment Vivian thought she was alone. It took 2 hours to download to an external hard drive. By the time she was done, the lawyers were leaving. Vivian was opening champagne, and Maya had enough evidence to bury them all. She walked back to the house at exactly 5:15 p.m., the invisible niece returning home. Vivian was in the study with Richard, both of them slightly drunk on victory and expensive wine. "Oh, Maya," Vivian said, barely looking at her. "The estate has been settled. You'll be receiving a small sum, $50,000, which should be more than adequate to establish yourself independently. I'll expect you to find your own accommodations within 60 days. 60 days, Maya repeated softly. "It's very generous considering," Vivian said. "I hope you appreciate it." "I do, Aunt Vivian. I appreciate everything." And she meant it, because Vivian had just given her a deadline. 60 days to destroy her. Maya wouldn't need half that long. The first crack appeared 3 days later. Maya was washing dishes, still playing her role, when she heard Vivian's voice rising from the study. "What do you mean there's a discrepancy?" Maya moved closer to the door, her hands still in soapy water. Richard's voice. "The bank is flagging the transfer from Eleanor's account. They're saying there's another authorized trustee listed who needs to approve transactions over $100,000. That's ridiculous. I have power of attorney. I've had it for 2 years. The bank says there was a change made 3 weeks before Mother died. Some lawyer in New York, Henderson, was added as a co-trustee on certain accounts." Silence. Maya could almost feel Vivian's panic through the walls. Which accounts? The main operating account, the Riverside Property Management account, and something called the Madison Trust Fund. "That fund was closed years ago," Vivian said quickly. Too quickly. "Apparently not. The bank shows regular deposits continuing until Mother's death, currently valued at," papers rustled, $3.7 million. "That can't be right." "It's right. And there's more. The bank received a letter from this Henderson 3 days ago requesting a full audit of all transactions from the past 15 years. They're legally required to comply." Maya heard glass breaking. Vivian had thrown something. "That interfering old woman," Vivian hissed. "Even dead, she's trying to control everything." "Vivian, if there's an audit, there won't be anything to find. I have documentation for every withdrawal." But Maya knew better. She'd seen the report. Vivian had forged invoices, created fake receipts, fabricated expenses. The documentation would never survive scrutiny. She retreated to the kitchen before anyone emerged, her heart racing. The audit would take weeks, maybe months, but it had begun. The second crack came 5 days after that. Maya was upstairs when she heard shouting from the driveway. She looked out her window to see an unfamiliar car, a black Mercedes with government plates. 2 people emerged, a woman in a sharp suit and a man carrying a briefcase marked with an official seal. Maya crept to the top of the stairs. "Mrs. Whitmore Sterling?" the woman said when Vivian answered the door. "I'm Agent Carol Peterson with the Internal Revenue Service. This is Agent James Rothstein. We'd like to ask you some questions about the Madison Trust Fund." The IRS. Eleanor had reported it to the IRS. "I don't know what you're talking about," Vivian said, but her voice had lost its usual confidence. "We have documentation that you've been managing a trust fund established for a minor, Maya Madison, since 2010. The withdrawals from that account were declared as expenses for the minor's care, which would make them non-taxable. However, we have reason to believe those expenses may have been misrepresented." "This is absurd. I have receipts for everything." "Then you won't mind showing them to us?" They were inside for 3 hours. Maya stayed upstairs, listening to Vivian's voice growing increasingly shrill, Richard's attempts at mediation, the agent's calm, relentless questioning. When they finally left, they took 6 boxes of documents with them. Maya watched from her window as Vivian stood in the driveway, her perfect composure finally cracking, her hands shaking as she pulled out her phone. The third crack was public. The Boston Globe ran a story 10 days after Eleanor's death. Questions raised over Whitmore estate distribution. Maya read it on her phone, her coffee growing cold. Sources close to the Whitmore family suggest that the recently filed will of Boston real estate matriarch Eleanor Whitmore may not represent her final wishes. An attorney in New York, Thomas Henderson, has filed a motion to contest the will, claiming to possess documents indicating fraud. The case centers on Maya Madison, 23, who was raised by Eleanor's daughter Vivian Whitmore Sterling after Madison's mother died in 2010. Sources claim Madison may actually be Eleanor Whitmore's biological granddaughter, though this has not been confirmed. Vivian Whitmore Sterling declined to comment. Her attorney called the claims baseless and motivated by greed. The case has been referred to probate court with a hearing scheduled for next month. Maya read the article 3 times. Then she read the comments section, hundreds of them, people she'd never met weighing in on her life. Gold digger, Finally, someone standing up for what's right. The rich eating each other, what else is new? If she's really the granddaughter, she deserves everything. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Ms. Madison? A female voice. This is Jennifer Wu from the Globe. I was hoping to get a comment about the estate dispute. Maya hung up. The phone rang again immediately. A different number, then another, then another. The press had found her. She turned off her phone and sat in her attic room, listening to the chaos erupting below as Vivian discovered the article. Everything was unraveling exactly as Eleanor had planned, but there was still one more move to make. That evening, Maya did something she'd never done before. She walked downstairs during dinner, a formal affair with Richard, Brandon, and Stephanie, and stood in the doorway of the dining room. They all looked up, surprised by her presence. "I need to speak with you," Maya said quietly. Vivian's fork clattered against her plate. "Not now, Maya. We're dealing with a very stressful situation." "I know. The IRS audit, the newspaper article, the probate case." Maya's voice was steady. "That's what I need to talk about." "You have nothing to do with any of this," Vivian snapped. "Actually," Maya said, "I have everything to do with it." She pulled a single sheet of paper from her pocket, a copy of one page from the report. The page showing the paternity test results. She placed it on the table in front of Vivian. "My name," Maya said softly, "is not Maya Madison." She let that hang in the air. "It's Maya Whitmore." Vivian's face went white. "I'm Michael's daughter, Eleanor's granddaughter, and you've known it for 15 years. Brandon leaned forward to read the document. Stephanie grabbed for it. Richard stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Where did you get that?" Vivian whispered. "From Eleanor. She left me everything I needed to prove who I am and what you've done." "You ungrateful little—" "I'm not little anymore," Maya interrupted. "And I'm done being grateful for crumbs from my own table." She turned and walked back upstairs, leaving the document behind, leaving them to tear themselves apart. The final crack had appeared, and through it, Maya could see daylight. Vivian came to Maya's room at midnight. Maya had been expecting her. She was sitting on her bed, laptop open, every light on. She'd learned that predators prefer darkness. Vivian didn't knock. She never had. "We need to talk," she said, closing the door behind her. "Then talk." Vivian studied her for a long moment, as if seeing her for the first time. Maya held her gaze, didn't look away, didn't shrink. "Where is the rest of it?" Vivian finally asked. "The rest of what?" "Don't play games with me. That document you showed us. It's part of something larger. What else do you have?" Maya said nothing. "Eleanor was a manipulative woman," Vivian continued, her voice tight. "She loved controlling people, even from beyond the grave. Whatever she told you, whatever poison she put in your head, you need to understand. I saved you. When your mother died, I took you in. I didn't have to." "No," Maya said softly. "You didn't have to. But you did." "Why was that, Aunt Vivian?" "Because you were family. Because I was evidence," Maya interrupted. "Evidence of Michael's affair. Evidence that you couldn't control your own husband. Evidence that someone else, someone you considered beneath you, had something you didn't." Vivian's jaw clenched. "You took me in to control the narrative," Maya continued. "To keep me small and grateful and silent. To punish me for my mother's crime. To steal the trust fund Eleanor set up for me. To erase any claim I might have to the Whitmore name. That's not—" "It's exactly true. And you know it." Silence filled the small room. Outside, wind rattled the windows. Inside, two women faced each other across an unbridgeable divide. "What do you want?" Vivian finally asked. "Money? I can give you more than 50,000. Name your price." "You can't afford my price." "Everything has a price, Maya. Everyone can be bought. Not me." Maya stood, drawing herself to full height. She was taller than Vivian. When had that happened? "I don't want your money. I want what's mine. You have no proof of anything. I have Eleanor's complete documentation of your fraud. I have the real will. I have bank records showing 15 years of theft. I have recordings of conversations you thought were private. I have the IRS investigating you. I have a probate case that will expose everything." Maya took a step forward. Vivian took a step back. "Most importantly, I have the truth. And you know what's fascinating about the truth, Aunt Vivian. It doesn't need you to believe it. It just is." "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Maya tilted her head. "The audit starts next week. The probate hearing is in 23 days. The district attorney received an anonymous package yesterday, copies of everything. The press is circling. Your attorney is already preparing to distance himself from you." She paused, watching Vivian's face pale with each revelation. "You built an empire on lies, and you were so confident, so sure no one would ever question you, that you got sloppy. Every forged receipt, every fake invoice, every withdrawal you claimed was for my benefit while I wore thrift store clothes and slept in a servant's room, all of it documented, all of it provable, all of it criminal." "I did what I had to do," Vivian whispered. "You don't understand what it's like being second best your entire life. Mother loved Sarah more than she ever loved me. She looked at you and saw Sarah. Every time I saw you, I saw my husband's betrayal." For the first time, Maya felt something almost like pity. "I didn't ask to be born," she said quietly. "I didn't ask for any of this. But you made choices, Aunt Vivian. Every day for 15 years you chose cruelty. You chose theft. You chose to make a child feel worthless because of your own pain. What are you going to do?" Vivian asked, and for the first time she sounded afraid. Maya returned to her bed, sat down, reopened her laptop. "I'm going to do exactly what Eleanor taught me," she said. "I'm going to let you destroy yourself. Every lie you tell from this point forward, every document you file, every attempt to cover your tracks, it's all evidence. You're drowning, and every move you make pushes you deeper underwater. That's cruel." Maya looked up, met her aunt's eyes one last time. "Yes," she said simply, "it is. I learned from the best." Vivian stood there for another moment, then turned and left. She didn't slam the door. That would have required energy she no longer had. Maya listened to her footsteps retreat down the hall, down the stairs, into the study where she would doubtless start making frantic phone calls to attorneys who couldn't save her. Then Maya returned to her documentation. The silent duel was over, and silence, it turned out, was the most devastating weapon of all. The probate courthouse was cold, sterile, and packed. Maya arrived 15 minutes early, wearing a suit she'd bought specifically for this occasion. Navy blue, professional, purchased with money borrowed from a friend because she'd be damned if she'd wear Vivian's charity to her own vindication. Thomas Henderson met her in the hallway. He was 70-something with silver hair and kind eyes that had seen everything twice. "Ready?" he asked. "I've been ready for 15 years. He smiled. "Eleanor said you'd say something like that." The courtroom was designed for drama. High ceilings, dark wood, a judge's bench that loomed over everything like divine judgment. Maya took her seat at the plaintiff's table, Henderson beside her. Across the aisle, Vivian sat with her attorney, Marcus Pemberton, a man whose reputation for defending the indefensible was legend. Richard was there, looking uncomfortable. Brandon and Stephanie sat behind them, for once not glancing at their phones. The gallery was half full, press in the back rows. Curious members of Boston society. A few faces Maya recognized from Eleanor's charity events, all of them here to watch the Whitmore family eat itself alive. "All rise." Judge Margaret Chen entered, a woman in her 60s with a reputation for sufferance of exactly zero bullshit. She'd built her career on complex estate cases. This one would be a footnote in her memoir. "Be seated. We're here for the matter of the estate of Eleanor Whitmore, contested by..." She consulted her papers. "Maya Madison, also known as Maya Whitmore. Mr. Henderson, you filed this motion. Proceed." Henderson stood, and suddenly the kindly old man disappeared. In his place was a legal predator who'd been waiting years for this moment. "Your Honor, Eleanor Whitmore came to me in January of 2022, 3 years before her death. She told me she needed to protect her granddaughter from her own family. At the time, I'll admit, I was skeptical. But over the next 3 years, Mrs. Whitmore provided me with documentation that revealed a pattern of fraud, theft, and manipulation that is both extensive and shocking." He opened his briefcase. "I'd like to submit into evidence the true last will and testament of Eleanor Whitmore, signed January 15, 2025, witnessed by 2 notaries and filed with my office per her instructions. I'd also like to submit genetic testing, proving that Maya Madison is the biological daughter of Michael Whitmore Sterling, and therefore Eleanor's legitimate granddaughter. Finally, I have documentation spanning 15 years showing systematic embezzlement of trust funds by Vivian Whitmore Sterling." He placed 3 thick folders on the judge's bench. Pemberton stood immediately. "Your Honor, these allegations are unsubstantiated." "They're substantiated by 15 years of bank records," Henderson interrupted calmly. "By forged receipts, by IRS documentation, by recordings of Mrs. Whitmore Sterling discussing the fraud. Would you like me to play those recordings now?" Vivian grabbed Pemberton's arm, whispered frantically in his ear. Judge Chen flipped through the first folder, then the second. Her expression never changed, but Maya saw her jaw tighten. "This DNA test," the judge said. "It's from 2007? "Yes, Your Honor. Ordered by Eleanor Whitmore when Michael Whitmore Sterling denied paternity. The results are conclusive. Maya is Michael's biological daughter, making her Eleanor's granddaughter and a direct heir. And Mrs. Whitmore Sterling knew this?" "She has known for 18 years, Your Honor. She took custody of Maya after Sarah Madison's death specifically to control the situation, to prevent Maya from claiming her rightful inheritance, and to steal the trust fund Eleanor had established." The judge turned to Vivian. "Mrs. Whitmore Sterling, did you know Maya was your late husband's biological daughter?" Pemberton stood. "Your Honor, my client." "I asked Mrs. Whitmore Sterling a direct question," Judge Chen said coldly. "She can answer it herself." All eyes turned to Vivian. She sat frozen, her perfect posture finally failing. Her hands trembled. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "I suspected," she finally whispered. "You suspected that this child was your husband's daughter, took her into your home, and then spent 15 years stealing from her. I provided for her. You stole $1.2 million from her trust fund," Henderson said, his voice cutting across hers. "The documentation is irrefutable. Fake invoices for private school tuition when she attended public school, forged medical bills when she received minimal health care, fraudulent residential improvement costs when she lived in an unheated attic room. That money was used for household expenses," Vivian tried. "Raising a child costs—" "The trust fund was legally designated for Maya's direct benefit," Henderson interrupted. "Not household expenses, not your children's actual private school tuition, not your vacation home renovation in 2015, all of which were paid for with Maya's money." Judge Chen closed the folder with a sound like a gunshot. "I've seen enough. Mr. Pemberton, unless you have evidence contradicting these DNA results or these financial records, I'm prepared to rule." Pemberton looked at Vivian. Vivian looked at the floor. "We request time to review the documentation, Your Honor." "Denied. This case has been deliberate fraud for 15 years. I'm not giving you more time to manufacture a defense." Judge Chen looked directly at Maya. "Ms. Whitmore, please stand." Maya stood, her legs shaking but her spine straight. "This court recognizes you as Maya Whitmore, biological granddaughter of Eleanor Whitmore and legal heir to her estate. The will submitted by Vivian Whitmore Sterling is hereby declared null and void. The will presented by Thomas Henderson is recognized as Eleanor Whitmore's legitimate final testament." The courtroom erupted, press scrambling for the doors, Vivian's face crumbling, Brandon and Stephanie staring in shock. "Furthermore," Judge Chen continued, voice rising above the chaos, "I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for criminal prosecution. Mrs. Whitmore Sterling, you are advised to retain criminal counsel. This hearing is adjourned." The gavel fell, and Maya Whitmore, not Maya Madison, not anymore, stood in a courthouse and watched justice arrive 15 years late. But it arrived, and that was enough. The fallout was swift and merciless. Within 48 hours, Vivian Whitmore Sterling was formally charged with embezzlement, fraud, and tax evasion. The District Attorney's Office, energized by the mountain of evidence Eleanor had compiled, moved with unusual speed. Bail was set at $500,000. Richard paid it, but his face in the courthouse hallway told a different story. He'd been humiliated. His brother's affair, hidden for 18 years, was now front-page news. His wife was a criminal. His own reputation, carefully built over decades as a respectable physician, was crumbling by association. "I didn't know," he told reporters, though no one believed him. "I had no idea what she was doing." Maya watched the press conference from Thomas Henderson's office, coffee cooling in her hands. "He absolutely knew," Henderson said, reading her thoughts. "Maybe not the details, but he knew something wasn't right. They always know." The most surprising betrayal came from Brandon and Stephanie. 2 days after the hearing, they released a joint statement through their own attorney, not their mother's. "We are shocked and devastated by the revelations about our mother's actions. We had no knowledge of the fraud committed against our cousin Maya. We support the legal process and hope that justice is served. We are cooperating fully with investigators." Maya read it twice, looking for sincerity, finding only self-preservation. "They're trying to distance themselves," Henderson explained. "Smart, actually. If they can prove they weren't involved, they might salvage their own inheritances from Eleanor." The real will leaves them each $100,000. Not the millions they thought they'd get, but better than nothing. Do you think they knew, Maya asked, about the fraud? Probably not the details, but about you being Michael's daughter. Henderson shrugged. They're not stupid. They had to have suspected. The cousins who'd mocked her for 15 years were now pretending they'd been innocent bystanders. It would have been funny if it wasn't so predictable. The legal establishment moved next. Marcus Pemberton, Vivian's attorney, filed a motion to withdraw from her case, claiming he'd been misled about the facts. The motion was granted. Within a week, 3 other attorneys turned down Vivian's case before she finally found someone desperate enough to take it. The IRS audit expanded. What started as an investigation into the Madison Trust Fund grew into a full review of Vivian's finances going back 20 years. They found discrepancies everywhere. Unreported gifts from Eleanor, suspicious charitable deductions, business expenses that were clearly personal. The bill, when it came, would be devastating, but perhaps the most poetic consequence came from Eleanor's former staff. Maria, who'd worked as Eleanor's housekeeper for 30 years, reached out to Maya through Henderson's office. She wanted to meet. They sat in a small cafe in Beacon Hill, Maria's weathered hands wrapped around a teacup. "I knew your mother," Maria said softly. "Sarah, she was kind to me, always asked about my children, remembered their names. When she died, I cried for days." Maya's throat tightened. "Thank you for telling me that. Mrs. Eleanor, she loved your mother too, like a daughter. And when you came to live there," Maria shook her head, "it broke my heart. The way Mrs. Vivian treated you, like you were nothing. You saw it. Everyone saw it. The staff talked about it. But what could we do? Mrs. Vivian controlled everything after Mrs. Eleanor got sick." Maria reached across the table, took Maya's hand. "I'm glad you fought back. I'm glad you won. Your mother would be proud." The words Maya had waited her whole life to hear, from a woman who'd actually known Sarah. She cried right there in the cafe, and Maria held her hand and let her. Later that week, 4 other former employees contacted her. A driver, a gardener, 2 more housekeepers, all with stories of Sarah, of Eleanor's kindness to her, of the suspicions they'd harbored about Maya's parentage. "We always wondered why you looked so much like Michael," one said, "but it wasn't our place to say." They'd all seen the truth. They'd all kept silent. But now, with Vivian's power broken, they could finally speak. And Maya learned that she'd never been as alone as she'd felt, that people had seen her, had cared, had simply been powerless to help. Until now. The Whitmore Properties Board moved last. Eleanor's shares, 43% of the company, had been left to Maya in the real will. Combined with shares held by other family members who'd always resented Vivian's control, Maya suddenly had the votes to reshape everything. The board called an emergency meeting. Vivian, still technically a board member, showed up pale and shaking. No pearls today, no perfect makeup, just a woman watching her empire dissolve. Maya sat at the head of the table, Eleanor's old seat. "I'm calling for a vote of no confidence in Vivian Whitmore Sterling as CEO," Maya said, her voice steady. "All in favor?" 6 hands rose immediately. Vivian stared at the raised hands, former allies, longtime friends, all abandoning her now that her power was gone. "You can't do this," she whispered. "I just did," Maya replied. "You're removed as CEO effective immediately. Security will escort you out. You're banned from all company properties pending resolution of the criminal charges." Vivian stood on shaking legs. For a moment, she looked like she might speak, might defend herself, might rage against the injustice. Instead, she simply walked out, shoulders bowed, the door closing behind her with soft finality. Maya watched her go and felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, just a quiet sense that the world had tilted back toward balance. "What happens to the company now?" one board member asked. Maya looked around the table at these people who'd enabled Vivian for years, who'd looked away when convenient, who'd cared about profits more than people. "Change," she said simply. "Everything changes now." Maya's first decision as the controlling shareholder of Whitmore Properties was to fire half the board. The old guard, men in their 60s and 70s who'd rubber-stamped Vivian's decisions for years, received generous severance packages and polite requests to retire. "Nothing personal," Maya told each of them, though it was absolutely personal. "I'm building something different. You're welcome to sell your shares or hold them, but you won't be making decisions anymore." She replaced them with younger voices, a woman who'd built affordable housing non-profits, a man who specialized in sustainable development, an architect known for designing homeless shelters that treated residents with dignity. The old board had been about profit margins. The new board was about impact. Your grandmother would approve, Thomas Henderson told her, reviewing the new corporate structure. She was moving this direction before she got sick. Vivian reversed everything. The Riverside Properties, 6 residential complexes that Eleanor had loved, became Maya's first project. Under Vivian's management, they'd been cash cows, market-rate apartments with minimal maintenance, maximum rent increases, tenants treated as revenue streams rather than humans. Maya visited each property personally, walked through units with sagging ceilings and broken heaters, talked to tenants who'd been fighting for repairs for months. "We're going to fix this," she promised, "all of it." It cost $2 million to bring the properties up to standard. New roofs, updated electrical, fresh paint, landscaping that didn't look like an afterthought. The board protested. "That's $2 million in immediate losses. That's $2 million in doing the right thing," Maya corrected. "Besides, happy tenants stay longer. They pay on time. They take care of the property. It's better business." She was right. Within 6 months, vacancy rates dropped. Rent collection improved. The properties became models for responsible management. The press noticed. "Whitmore heiress reimagines family business," read the headline in the Boston Business Journal. The article featured photos of Maya at the Riverside Properties, talking with residents, reviewing renovation plans. She looked nothing like the invisible girl who'd lived in Vivian's attic. She looked like someone who belonged exactly where she was. But the property business was only part of Eleanor's legacy. There was also the Madison Trust Fund. What remained of it after Vivian's theft? The fund had started at $2.3 million. After 15 years of growth and Vivian's withdrawals, it currently held $3.7 million. With the recovered stolen funds and legal penalties, it would eventually reach nearly $5 million. Maya could have kept it. It was legally hers. Instead, she transformed it. "I'm creating the Sarah Madison Foundation," she announced at a press conference 3 months after the trial. "It will provide college scholarships for young people aging out of foster care or being raised by relatives who aren't their parents. Kids who feel like outsiders, who've been told they don't belong." She paused, composed herself. "Kids like I was." The foundation's first year funded 20 scholarships, full tuition, room and board, and a stipend for books and living expenses. Maya reviewed every application personally, read every essay, looked for the kids who'd been told they weren't good enough, who'd survived anyway, who just needed someone to believe in them. She gave them what Eleanor had tried to give her, a chance. The Whitmore house, the mansion where she'd spent 15 years as a servant, required a different kind of transformation. Richard wanted to sell it. "Too many bad memories," he said, and Maya couldn't argue. But instead of selling to the highest bidder, Maya donated it to a non-profit that created transitional housing for women leaving domestic violence situations. "My mother would like that," she told the non-profit director as they toured the property. She knew what it was like to need a safe place. The attic room where Maya had slept became a counselor's office. The formal dining room, where she'd been declared worthless, became a communal space for healing. Vivian's perfect house, built on control and cruelty, became a sanctuary for the powerless. Maya kept only one thing from the house: Eleanor's desk from the study. It was solid mahogany, scarred with decades of use. Eleanor had written her will at this desk, had compiled the evidence that saved Maya, had planned her granddaughter's liberation. Maya installed it in her new office, a modest space in the Whitmore Properties building, with windows overlooking the Charles River. On the desk, she placed 3 photographs. One of Eleanor, taken at a charity gala in her prime, looking fierce and elegant. One of Sarah, holding infant Maya, both of them glowing. And one new photo, Maya herself, standing in front of the Riverside Properties, surrounded by smiling residents. 3 generations of Whitmore women, one erased, one forgotten, one finally, permanently visible. The empire hadn't just been rebuilt, it had been redeemed. Maya found the final letter 6 months after the trial, hidden in a compartment in Eleanor's desk. She'd been organizing files when her hand caught on something, a small lever disguised as decorative carving. When she pressed it, a drawer popped open, so perfectly concealed she'd never noticed it. Inside was a single envelope, sealed with red wax, marked with Eleanor's personal seal. "For Maya, when you're ready." Maya sat down slowly. She'd thought she had all of Eleanor's letters, all her messages, but the old woman had saved one more secret. She broke the seal with trembling fingers. The letter was written in Eleanor's handwriting, shaky but legible, clearly penned in her final days. My dearest Maya, if you found this, it means you've won. The will has been read, the truth revealed, Vivian held accountable. I pray it happened exactly as I planned. I pray I gave you enough weapons to fight with. There are things I need you to know. Things I couldn't say while alive, either from cowardice or necessity. I'm still not sure which. I knew about you before you were born. Sarah told me she was pregnant. She told me Michael was the father. She cried in my office and asked me what to do, and I failed her, Maya. I failed her completely. I should have forced Michael to acknowledge you, should have threatened to cut him off entirely if he didn't do right by Sarah. But I was weak. I was afraid of scandal, afraid of what it would do to the family name. I thought I was protecting everyone. Instead, I protected no one. Michael died ashamed. Sarah died without the acknowledgement she deserved. And you grew up believing you were nobody's daughter. That is my greatest sin. When Sarah died and Vivian offered to take you, I should have known better. I knew how much Vivian hated her. I saw the jealousy, the resentment. But I was grieving and I was tired, and I told myself that family was family. I was a fool. By the time I understood what Vivian was doing to you, how she was treating you, stealing from you, breaking you piece by piece, I was already weakening. The strokes had started. Vivian was taking control. I saw the trap closing but couldn't stop it. So I did what I could. I documented, I planned, I created fail-safes. I turned myself into a time bomb set to explode after my death, when I couldn't be manipulated anymore, and you would be old enough to handle the truth. I don't know if that was bravery or more cowardice, but it's what I did. Maya, you need to understand something. Your mother was not a mistake. You were not a mistake. Sarah was one of the best people I ever knew. She was brilliant and kind and strong. She deserved so much more than she got. When I held you as a baby, I made her a promise. I promised I would protect you, that I would make sure you knew the truth, that you would have everything you deserved. I broke that promise in life. I hope I've kept it in death. You are a Whitmore, Maya, not because of blood, though that's real enough, but because you have the strength that this family was built on, the strength I had once before I let fear weaken me, the strength Sarah had in abundance, the strength I see in you, even when you don't see it in yourself. Don't let them make you bitter. Don't let what Vivian did turn you cruel. You've suffered enough cruelty to justify becoming a monster. But I'm asking you to choose differently. Build something better. Use what I've left you to help people. Be the woman your mother raised you to be. Kind despite everything, strong because of everything. I'm sorry I failed you while I lived. I hope I've helped you in death. You were always the heir, Maya. The true heir. Not of money or property, though those are yours, but of something deeper. You're the heir to everything good in this family, everything worth preserving. Make me proud. Make Sarah proud. But most importantly, make yourself proud. With all the love I should have shown you in life, Eleanor P.S. The desk you found this in belonged to my grandmother, who built the first Whitmore property with money she saved from working as a seamstress. She was told women couldn't do business. She proved them wrong. The desk is yours now. Build your empire from it. Maya read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Eleanor had known, had seen, had planned. And in the end, despite all her failures, she'd given Maya exactly what she needed. Not just wealth, not just vindication, but the truth. Maya folded the letter carefully and placed it in the hidden drawer. Some things were meant to be kept secret. Some things were just for her. Then she returned to work, building the empire Eleanor had entrusted to her, honoring the grandmother who'd failed, and then miraculously succeeded anyway. 1 year after the trial, Maya returned to the house on Beacon Hill, not Vivian's house anymore. The transitional housing non-profit had transformed it completely. The formal entrance where she'd stood invisible now welcomed women finding their strength. The dining room where she'd been erased now hosted group therapy sessions. The director Carmen met her at the door. "Ms. Whitmore, we weren't expecting you." "I know, I just wanted to see it." They walked through together. The changes were beautiful. Where there had been cold elegance, there was now warm practicality. Vivian's designer furniture had been replaced with comfortable couches, her crystal chandeliers with soft lighting that didn't intimidate. "The women love it here," Carmen said. "They feel safe. Many of them talk about it being the first place they've ever felt like they could breathe." Maya understood that feeling intimately. They climbed to the 3rd floor. The attic hallway was brighter now. Someone had installed skylights. The doors had been painted cheerful colors. "This was my room," Maya said, stopping at the blue door. Really? It's our counselor's office now. Would you like to see it? The room was unrecognizable. The water-stained ceiling had been repaired, the creaking floor refinished. There was a desk, comfortable chairs, plants on the windowsill. Nothing remained of the prison it had been. It's perfect, Maya whispered. On her way out, she paused in the entrance hall. A large portrait of Eleanor hung there, donated by Maya, painted from a photograph taken when Eleanor was 50, fierce and powerful. Beneath it a plaque, Eleanor Whitmore House, in memory of a woman who believed in second chances and in honor of the granddaughter who made sure everyone got one. Maya stood before the portrait for a long moment. I did it, Eleanor, she said softly. I took what was mine. I rebuilt what you started. I didn't let them make me cruel. The painted eyes seemed to approve. Outside, Boston glittered in autumn sunlight. Maya's car waited at the curb. Nothing ostentatious, just a reliable sedan. She had money now, certainly. Power, position, but she'd learned what mattered. Her phone buzzed. A text from the foundation. 12 new scholarship applications this week. Some really strong candidates. She smiled and typed back, review them all. Let's find the kids who need us most. The kids who felt invisible, who'd been told they didn't belong, who just needed someone to see them. Maya walked down the steps of the house that had once been her prison, now transformed into sanctuary. She thought about Vivian, awaiting sentencing in her reduced circumstances, about Brandon and Stephanie, rebuilding their lives with the pieces left after the truth came out, about Eleanor, failing, and then finding redemption, about Sarah, who'd loved her so fiercely but hadn't lived to see her daughter claim her name, and about herself, Maya Whitmore, no longer Madison, no longer the forgotten niece, no longer the charity case. She was the heiress who'd been erased, and the woman who'd written herself back into existence. They called her an outsider, a pretender, someone who didn't belong. But she had been, from the very beginning, the true heir to the story they'd tried to erase. And now, finally, she was writing the ending herself.